Hello and welcome to another lesson, this time on sponsorship and the media. Just a reminder in regards to these presentations, so the yellow text boxes are the tasks for students, the green text boxes are the note-taking sections for students, the blue text boxes are the differentiation tasks, and the red text boxes are the teaching and learning strategies and ideas for the practitioner. So in regards to this topic, what does the syllabus require us to know? So we need to know what that key definition of sponsorship is. So we need to know specifically what we mean by that keyword sponsorship, and also the aspects of media in sport. So once we've got an understanding of those two concepts, we then think about what are the different types of sponsorship and media in sport, and can we give different examples of that? So we're showing a bit of AO2, and then for the AO3, we're looking at evaluating the positive and negative impacts of sponsorship and the media in sports. So let's get cracking. So let's look at this keyword first and foremost in regards to sponsorship. So when we're thinking about sponsorship, we're talking about the provision of funds or other forms of support to an individual or event in return for some commercial return. So in its simplest form, we really talk about advertising, okay? And we think about the brand or the logo or the product which is on offer and is being advertised to hopefully increase those sales of that specific product for the company. And in essence, we do that through sport because ultimately spectators tend to buy those specific products. Okay, so we're increasing and raising brand awareness. So what are the reasons for sponsorship? So in essence, we're looking to associate the product, the brand, to a specific individual, team or sport. So whether it's Roger Federer, Serena Williams, whether it's a specific team or sport, we're looking to associate ourselves with those things. And that in essence will hopefully increase brand awareness, product awareness, and it'll increase the publicity of that specific brand. And if that awareness increases, then ultimately, hopefully, we're going to increase our sales. And that's the prime goal for any company and any brand. And the other aspect that we can look at is that there's a tax deduction. So it's actually cheaper to sponsor in an individual or a team or a sport than it is to advertise through things like TV. So actually we have a lower tax bill when we sponsor. And we can also get local sponsors who might sponsor with the intention of just helping others. So they might do this as a charitable way. And this is known as philanthropic. Okay, so it's a keyword that you might need to know in regards to the exam. So it could be, for example, a local football team who might get sponsored by a local business or company, such as, for example, if we look at sort of the idea of increasing microphones and stereos around the stadium, okay, so the sound system, okay, so the local business might decide to sponsor that way. So pause the video here. Can you think of a sporting athlete who is currently sponsored? Who are they sponsored by? So let's see if you know any ideas in regards to that, and what are the perks for the performer? Okay, so the example I've given here is Antony Joshua. Okay, so he's got various sponsors in regards to his boxing career. Under Armour is a key example where he'll get a lot of clothing, footwear from that sporting brand. He'll also be sponsored by JD, another sort of clothing retail outlet. He's sponsored by the music system in regards to Beats, okay, and he's also sponsored by things like Land Rover and Jaguar, so he may be endorsed and get some free products through them, so he might have a car through them. And also British Airways might fund some of his transport to and from the different events that he goes to compete. So let's look at the different types of sponsors for an individual athlete, and specifically we're going to be looking at Olympic athletes such as Jess Ennis. So the main source of funding will come from cash payments themselves by the sponsor. And that helps with things like entry fees to different competitions, because the individual athlete might have to pay to compete in a specific competition. It'll help in regards to travel costs to and from an event, whether it's international or whether it's at home. We'll also provide things like equipment, apparatus. So if we're using, for example, tennis rackets, badminton rackets, and so on, it will provide equipment in regards to that. And also perks such as things like clothing, footwear from that specific brand. So we can see Jess Ennis there with a lot of Adidas attire in regards to clothing, but also footwear as well. It'll also pay for things like accommodation in regards to maybe staying over in specific hotels. And also it might help provide better coaching. And that in essence will also help in regards to providing better facilities. So again, pause your video here. Can you now think of any sporting teams who are sponsored? Who are they sponsored by? And again, what are the perks for that specific club or team? All right, so if you've answered that question, you've hopefully spotted diagrammed some ideas. Let's look at what the perks are for the teams themselves. So they'll get things like training equipment, footballs, bibs, cones, all those kind of things. They'll also get the perks in regards to things like the team kits, the tracksuit, footwear, and also training facilities might improve, okay, because of the funding that's being given to them by the sponsor. So it could be things like AstroTurf, indoor courts, and so on. And that will help in regards to maybe providing more money for specialist coaches to run the training sessions, and the clubs themselves will be able to know what they want to buy for the specific needs of their team. So this could be included things like physiotherapists to help with recovery of injury. It might help with nutritionists to help with the diet and the monitoring of their specific athletes, and also looking at things like transport of getting the team to and from the specific events. When we think of the media, we need to know the different types of media. So we've got things like TV, radio, internet, newspaper, magazines and books, and what is becoming bigger and bigger of late, social media. And in essence, sport is seen as being a fairly cheap form of entertainment for TV companies. If we think of soap dramas, EastEnders, Coronation Street, we need to pay quite a few actors wages in order to, for their services in regards to those soap dramas. But in essence, sport is free for those TV companies because the players will be will have wages through the specific clubs. So all the TV companies are paying for will be things like cameramen to actually get to the specific event, maybe the commentators themselves and so on. So it's a relatively cheaper form of entertainment. So again, pause your video here. Can you think of different examples of sport of where we have the different types of media? So what examples of media do we have for TV, radio, newspapers, the internet and social media? So if we look at the TV, first of all, we're talking about the fact that these are live images. They're the main viewing platform. And in essence, we'll have things like BBC, BT, Sky Sports, Eurosports, okay? When we think of radio itself, this is kind of a more detailed information. It's kind of painting the picture. We have in-depth interviews and there'll be outlets through examples such as Talk Sport and Radio 5 Live. When we think of newspapers, these in essence are trying to sell as many copies as possible, and we have two types of services for this: a broadsheet, which is more information service through things like Times and Telegraph, and then we've got the tabloid papers, which are more kind of rumour mill papers. They look to sensationalise events, and that's through things like the Sun and the Mirror. And then if we look at the internet, this is fast becoming the main source of information for sports. Live updates, we have again news on teams, sports, players, and there'll be things like BBC Sport, we'll have Sky Sports and the specific club websites. And social media, which also looks at the social interaction, this interactive discussion between players and spectators themselves, and this might be through things like Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat and Twitch. So when we think of the TV in particular, this is kind of seen as the best form of media because in essence it's showing the live images of that specific event. And we have two types of TV kind of outlets where we have the satellite and cable channels, and these are more subscription based, so we have to pay a fee in order to access them, and that will be through things like Sky Sports and BT Sport. And then we have terrestrial, which is free. This is kind of paid on an annual fee through our TV license, and in essence this is a public corporation, so this is through the taxpayers funding through things like BBC and ITV. And in essence sport meets the requirements of TV through things like demonstrating the fitness levels, demonstrating the skill levels, the fact it's competitive, it's relatively simple rules, most of invasive games, and we have a timescale. So TV can fit in a sporting match as it knows there's a start and there's an end. It might be 2 hours long, for example, if it's football or rugby, and so on. So when we think of sport and the media, let's think of the positive aspects and the positive effects on an athlete. So pause video here, you've got a spider diagram on the bottom right, write that out and draw as many ideas that you can think of how the media affects positively the athlete. So let's whiz through these. First and foremost, it demonstrates good performance and examples of the athlete to copy, so that will improve the standard of the individual skill. It might educate the performer to analyse their own performance or the team tactics. Again, this will give a greater understanding to the performer about their specific sport. We can look at things like slow motion, the good and bad technique, technical points, and in essence this again will help the performer to look at their own performance, both good and bad, and in essence it might report exceptional performance, okay, and this helps improve the confidence and the motivation of the performer. Again, pause video here, try and spider diagram the positive effects now of the media on sport itself. So again, if we go through these, first and foremost, it might demonstrate good performance and examples for athletes to copy. So again, improving the standards of the sport. We want to emulate our role models. Again, it helped the officials make fair decisions, which might improve the reputation of the sport. Rugby is a really good example of this, with clear communication between officials and fair decisions. It might also promote things like the health benefits, which again increases the participation and popularity of different sports. And in essence, through payment of broadcasting rights, through things like sponsorship indirectly, it increases the revenue into the sport. So this might increase the accessibility, the facilities, the standards of sport to improve, and in essence that increases the popularity, the publicity, so hopefully more people will start playing. I've put a picture there of female sports. In the last 10 years in particular, we've seen a big increase in regards to businesses coming into female sports, and that's why we've seen a big increase in the awareness and popularity and participation, for that matter, of female sports. Let's think of now the positive effects on participation. Again, pause your video here, draw the spider diagram, see what the effects are of media on participation. So if we have greater participation, that means we've got an increase of coverage, we've got an increase of interest, and in essence that means that there's more possibilities and opportunities to watch sports. And if there's more opportunities to watch sport, that can help us, educate us, to give us a better need for a healthy lifestyle. It also might help us and educate us to know the concerns of and the consequences of a sedentary lifestyle. And in essence, it will inform us how and where to participate. BBC are really good at that. They do the hashtag Get Involved, shows us where to play, when to play in our local communities and areas. The media can also help in regards to entertainment, and it might attract participation, and it will inspire the next generation of promoting role models, okay, to achieve and emulate the successes of what they see on TV. The 2020 Olympic Games in London had a big spike in numbers after in regards to participation in Olympic-based activities, and especially for females. Okay, we had lots of positive role models in 2012 of female athletes. If we move and look at the negative impacts of the media on sport and the performer, okay, first and foremost, if we look at sport, so obviously the negative impacts of the media is that it might have an excessive coverage of only certain sports. So some minority sports will be missed out. So things like badminton, for example, table tennis doesn't get the coverage that football, netball, basketball to a certain extent, rugby gets, and this might discourage people also coming to the event. If we're watching live performances on TV, it might discourage people watching the event live themselves in the stadium. They want to save some money. Some of the lesser clubs and the lesser sports will get reduced funding. So there's a big difference between those that have and those that have not. This media will definitely interfere with the timings of the events, so they'll be demanding when the fixtures are played and what time to help with scheduling of TV. On the performer themselves, it will increase the demand. It might reduce enjoyment. It'll increase pressure. So there's this idea of professionalism going too much and overboard. There'll also be a scrutiny of fame, of being in the spotlight, of highlighting certain mistakes. And that has an impact on mental health and might result in greater increases in chances of depression. Those mistakes become very public. We think of Lloris Karius for Liverpool in the Champions League final a couple of years ago, okay, and you can think of other examples yourself. But some extroverts will thrive under the pressure, and we have to realise that, and introverts won't, okay, the quiet people. And finally, for the teaching and learning strategies, have a read through those. These are some examples that you might want to come up with in regards to looking at finishing this topic. Best of luck, folks.